So thank you for joining at this late hour in Vegas, and I know people are starting to get a little antsy on that. So we promise to keep it light, keep it enlightening. I will do my best to cross any line possible, and hopefully something more memorable. But by means of introduction about myself a little bit, what we do, and then going into Vivek as he is a fountain of knowledge. As mentioned, my name is Victor Lee. I'm president of Advantage Unified Commerce. We are the marketing division of Advantage Solutions. Advantage Solutions is the largest sales brokerage for CPG in the country. On the marketing division, we specialize in really selling shit. Basically, if it's shopper, e-com, Amazon, or RMN, that's where we sit. If you want us to do a brand campaign or Super Bowl, I'm not going to do it. But if you say I need 5 more share points or X amount of retail sales, that's what we focus on that side. So, enough about me. To go into Vivek a little bit, I'm going to read something that I don't think he wrote because it sounds really good, and unless he's that type of person. But Vivek Rastogi is a well-respected leader with more than 17 years of CPG experience. He has led roles with increasing responsibilities across different commercial functions and across different geographies such as India, the UK, and the US. Currently, he is the Senior Director of Global Digital Commerce at Colgate Palmolive and leads the end-to-end digital and omni-channel strategy, retail, media, clean rooms, and customer growth plans. He's a digital commerce expert, thought leader, and has played a pivotal role in establishing e-commerce businesses and teams from their infancy in multiple markets and business. And last night, he attended the Sphere for the first time, and so feel free to ask him his opinion on that. And currently lives in Seattle. So we're going to get into the first question, and this is about retail media networks. So if anybody checked off that it will be mentioned 700 times today, you just hit bingo. So now we're going to say it probably about 30 more times today. Before I go into the question, I guess what's interesting about retail media networks, we're going to debunk a lot because we've been talking a lot about this is not to steal your punchline, but it's not special. It just happens to be on a different place than Google or Facebook or Meta or whatever it is, but it's not special. It's just what you do with it that makes it special. And I'm sure most of you guys who are buying or planning to build or whatever it is it's a land grab. Because if any brand marketers are in here, you're saying, I got $10 million to spend, retail media networks is a new hot, sexy item right now, but my boss doesn't give me another 5, I just got to cut another pie. No difference than television. Television, outdoor, print had 100%. Digital comes in, and now suddenly I don't get more money, but how do I carve it? And now you have to prove out the efficacy of all of it, because somebody's going to say, how do I know it worked? Well, they don't want to know how everything worked, right? Most executives don't ask, how do I know the Super Bowl ad worked? They always ask, how do I know digital works? Because I don't understand digital. I know when I buy TV, I see GRP points and tried and true. That's where we are at retail media networks. No difference than mobile advertising, social media, digital, search, display, everything in the last 15 years. So with that being said, so what do you think about retail media networks?
No, first of all, I did not write that introduction, so thank you. That was very generous. Now, you said it right? Retail media networks is the hot and the sexy thing right now. Everyone's kind of trying to peel the different layers that there are to retail media networks, but I tend to oversimplify a lot of these things that you said. It's not really special, and to me, a lot of people ask me, what is retail media? And there are lots of definitions going around in the industry right now, but to me, it's simple to an extent, saying it's media just being sold to you by right? That's the starting point, right? Now, of course, there are nuances to it in terms of data. It's not okay, right?
Let's switch to high school.
Okay. Of course, there are nuances to it in terms of data and attributions and platforms that, and different retail media networks are at different stages of evolution right now. Everyone has a retail media network today. But for me, the starting point is it's just media being sold to you by retailers. That's it. And I think that's a good starting point to start to understanding retail media. Because sometimes you really make a big deal out of it. What is this? Who's supposed to handle it and all that stuff? And I think that definition is very important. That's what I think of retail media network to begin with, actually.
So I'm going to veer a little bit because it's a great conversation and I'm trying to catch you on the spot. I spent almost a decade as the head of digital marketing at Hasbro, and I remember there was a lot of questions of, well, why should we do X, Y, and Z? And a lot of questions would be about the simple stuff. Now it's simple. Back then it was, why should we buy more Google? And people didn't understand we would run $200 million on TV, on Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, or Cartoon Network. Kids are watching TV, but they're watching YouTube more. And they know how to search more than their parents do. So, but nobody believed at that point why they should spend more search. Somebody actually said to me, when I type in Transformers, we're first on SEO, so why should I pay for it? Right, so you can imagine the moment I had where I thought I made a bad career decision of going there. So what I'm trying to get to now is people in our industry that are in this retail space, media space, e-commerce space, digital, if anybody's still, you're always trying to fight to prove something. So how do you deliver that this is a win, not only for you, Colgate, Palmolive, it's a win for the retailers, Amazon, Walmart, Kroger, whoever else, Target. It's a win for the brand, a win for everybody else, because you're fighting against people inside that says, no, it's a trend, it's a fad. Everybody's waiting for TikTok to stop. Everybody's still waiting for Facebook or Meta to go away. Everybody still thinks Amazon's not a retailer. Well, how do you convince somebody of that it's a win-win across the board?
And that's really where we are right now. In a lot of small and large companies, really, there are a lot of skeptics. It's just a fact. It's going to come and grow. It's not really media, and so on and so forth. But if you really look at it, the way I tend to approach retail media is one. There is a reason it's exploded, especially in the US, like 50 billion plus in 23, and it's not been around for a long time, right? Obviously, so that's a starting point where the biggest of skeptics are at least sitting up and taking notice. There's something here to it. But I think to me, retail media is very, very important simply because if you really look at outside of retail media and what's happening in media trends in general, right? We're talking about decline in television. The ratings are declining. Linear TV is on a declining trend. We're talking about digitization of stores on the other hand. And there's this impending thing of deprecation of third-party cookies. And if you really look at these, and there are obviously some other trends, but if you really look at these three top trends, retail media, I believe, sit at a nice sweet spot between these three, where it's not only looking at opportunities where you can leverage some really good things about retail media, but it also helps you to navigate some of these challenges, either current or which are going to be there in the near future. So I think there is more to just being this a hot topic. There is substantive advantages of having retail media, and I think from a brand perspective, it is. I say this all the time. There's this famous marketing quote saying, "I spend I know half my marketing dollars are wasted. I don't know which half." And I think with retail media, possibly this is the closest we have come to solving that challenge. Right? It can really help you close loop attribution. It can really measure every single point of the consumer journey. So that's a huge advantage for marketers. It helps you leverage your first-party data for the first time, like a lot of CPG companies and other industries that are collecting first-party data because third-party cookies are going to go away. It allows you to integrate that with retail media networks to really get into genuine consumer insights and audience segments and things like that. So I think from a brand perspective, there's a lot of advantages there, both from a measurement, attribution, first-party data, and things like that. For the retailers, it's even more straightforward, right? It is a revenue stream that they have chanced upon, which is fascinating. It's incremental, it's far more profitable than the retail business would ever come in. Like retail business, the best of the business, they make about 3 to 5%. This is talking about 70, 80, and 90%, right? So they want to really leverage that. And also helps them give better consumer experience, right? In the omni-channel world that we're living in, they can really, if done correctly, right, they can really give a seamless omni-channel, multi-moment experience to the consumer. So I think it's a win-win across the board, and I think that's why it will have more legs and rather than just being a fad.
What's interesting that you just mentioned is that people are still using marketing funnel, right? You got to throw that out because remember the marketing funnel before at the bottom is kind of the lowest hanging fruit. And now when you introduce stuff like this, Do you just attach it to the bottom of the funnel and say, look, we're doing this? Whereas in reality, most search start for research start at the bottom. And it's no longer a path. Everybody's a buzzword, right? Path to purchase. And it really doesn't happen that way anymore because look at your personal behavior. How many brands, whether, let's say today even, that you experienced today, they never even heard of? Where did you go first to look at it? Was it consistent in the other 5 brands you looked up? Probably not. Maybe Google, maybe their brand website, maybe Amazon. But we, as a society and as a group, keep saying, but you gotta start here and go down. Because it's easier to do it that way. And I think that's where you're saying win-win. And what disruption has happened. So I'm gonna go back into a story a while back in the early 2000s. I was at Digitize. And somebody said, I want to create something in New York City because they keep having a week for advertising. TV. And the idea of a new front was created. I don't know if anybody knew that, but Digitize created that originally. And originally it was us bringing our clients in. And then 2 or 3 years later, the IAB came around and said, hey, we want to be a piece of it, blah, blah, blah. Now you have the new front. That's disruption because that was the glory shouldn't be for the TV buyers. And then digital happened. Now you fast forward almost a decade later, I remember I was at an event in the New Front, and it was one of the digital companies, I believe it was Facebook, and it was not busy. So I asked somebody at the IAB what happened. They said, well, Walmart and Target are here. And they did an event. Well, what do they have to do with this? They're like, retail media. First I ever heard, this was almost 10 years ago. That shift was real. Then the next year, what happened? Walmart showed up again, Target showed up again, Amazon showed up. Everybody's trying to shift, like YouTube is still there. So, is this really disruption, trend, cool? Like, is this skinny jeans, but it's going to go away?
No, it's not going to go away. And I love the fact that you talk about the disruption because a lot of us talk about opportunities and potential and all that stuff, and all that is there. But I think for me, where we are, I think as a brand on retail media journey, it's a lot of challenges and disruption that we need to manage. And to be able to actually leverage the potential of retail media is the disruption, to be honest, that I'm focused on. Just give you a few that we are grappling with it. And as I speak in industry forums, a lot of our peers, they're going through the same journey. The first and the foremost is right, apart from the definition, all of that stuff, is there's just so many retail media networks today. They're coming up every day. How do you even make choices, right? Like, everyone wants a piece of a pie, hopefully incremental, and over and top of whatever you're already investing in them now. You all know media dollars or dollars in general, kind of always do it, right? So how do you kind of manage that situation? So that's one part of it. But for me, the fascinating part of it is just the dynamics between retailers and brands today. And, I was talking to you a little while back, the first thing that I find fascinating is it's an equation flip, right? Traditionally, brands and retailers have operated in a manner where we sell to the retailers and they buy from us. This is the first time retailers actually selling something to the brands. And that's an equation flip. Suddenly we are the clients, they are the sellers. That's an interesting dynamic in the room. The second thing that I find even more fascinating, and I've sat in those kind of meetings, is a sales guy who's always managed the retailer is suddenly needing to talk media. He does not understand, he or she does not understand media, they've never spoken media. And how do you manage that equation to a buyer who also do not understand media and all of those things themselves, right? So how do you kind of fill that knowledge gap? Or look at your team structures where the big question is, who should even handle retail media? Is it media? Is it retail? Is it customer? Is it sales? Is it marketing and all of that stuff? And I don't think so there's any right answer there. At least at this point in time. And, we've piloted, tested a few models, and I think we're kind of coming to a point where we know what it is. But these are some fascinating internal discussions that we are having today before we even get to the stage in terms of how do we really utilize retail media. And the other thing that I would say is just the funds, right? Is it marketing funds? Is it media funds? Is it trade funds, right? Incremental, not incremental. So that's the kind of disruption I'm talking about. So it's actually disrupting the equations, the industry norms, just the way the business has happened for so many years. And I think it'll take some time for this thing to settle down. It's like almost when e-commerce started in at least the CPG industry about 5-10 years back, right? Like, where should e-commerce team sit? Should it be a sales team? Should it be a marketing team? It's the kind of same conversation that we're having today. That for me is a huge disruption.
That disruption is a good point, because for those of you living inside whatever world you're living in, I'm sure you're dealing with if you're on the sales side or if you're on the buy side, you're like, who's the decision maker, right? The most infamous word. Well, if you're talking retail media, you're probably going to experience brand where it's on the brand side. You might be on the commercial side. We have clients that ask us this all the time. So to your point earlier, you said e-commerce. When I was at Hasbro, digital marketing was created as a separate standalone function. And when I was asked, what do we do in the future? I said, ultimately, you should not have a standalone digital marketing function. It needs to be as part of the brand, or the brand teams will never adopt or adapt in the right way. Now, it was easier to make that shift because we started at 6 people in the org when I started. We ended at 45. And finally, I said, okay, kids, fly off on your own and put them into the brands. Then the brands got more digital experience instantaneously instead of trying to train up, which you could. But the reality is I can't train somebody 25 years in 25 days. And then if you grow it from within, that's what happened in digital marketing and e-commerce. Now you're going to see Artman isn't going away. The reason why it's not going away is because Amazon's been doing it for almost 30 years. So it's not going away anytime soon. It's a matter of how do you think about it, how does it matter, and what do you do to it, which a lot of clients will say to me, ask, we're not structured well, how do we win? And I have to tell them, unfortunately, because it's not a really good answer, that's a you organizational problem, it's a territorial problem. It is the chief commercial officer has trade and sales spend, chief marketing officer has brand and media spend. You guys got to lock yourself in a room and figure it out, because if you don't, guess what? The whole company loses. And I can tell you there's 75% of all the clients we work with are in that boat, which was fascinating because the first question I asked any brand people, how are you structured? And this was the closest I ever heard anybody say, we're not there, but we're pretty good. And as he walked through it, I was fascinated because you got to first set ego aside. Because as you think inside, whoever that has the budget has the power, right? That's kind of what the perception is. Somebody could be the chief recommendation officer, but they don't have the budget, so they can't really do anything. You got to throw that aside. So the last thing that we'll throw in ad hoc in there is you mentioned too, there are a lot of RMNs. And I forget what the number is, 297 plus another 50 that start. I love the fact that 7-Eleven started theirs, and the name of their RMN group is called Gold. But the reality too, because we represent a lot of retailers, they'll say, how do we do it? How do we start? Because a lot of retailers think I can just start. I'm just going to turn it on, hire a couple salespeople, and now I'm going to make 70% margin. And then you have these third parties now coming and say, wait, Citrus Ads and whatever, say we can help build it. Now you got overnight agencies saying, we'll build it for you because I see an opportunity in a white space. Now they're right, now they're wrong, it depends which decision I make. You answered a little bit, but I'm say 297, I'm going to just say Colgate, right? Bread and butter, tried and true, sold almost everywhere. I'm sure your ACV is through the roof. How do you decide where you want to go into and how not to go into, knowing nobody's giving you more money?
We haven't solved it yet, to be honest. But I think what we're trying to do is, it is really, really tough right now because again, going back to the dynamics, right? Every salesperson wants some media dollars because they have to, it gets intertwined with your JVP discussions and your negotiations and your trade terms and things like that. But again, it goes back to, you got to be really clear in terms of what is retail media for you. Is it really about building that, or is it about just managing your trade terms for the retailers? And we've kind of taken that point, and there's been a shift over the last couple of years where we are looking at retail media in its, in full sense and really talking about it as more media rather than retail. And the way we have done it is, to answer your question about choices, we're trying to make choices. We developed an assessment framework for all the RMNs where we are actually trying to look at these RMNs objectively. We have retail, matrix, we have media matrix, and we're trying to say, depending on what I want to do with that retailer or that media network, we're trying to get an understanding of what is the capability that they're bringing to the table? What is unique about an X RMN versus a Y RMN? And trust me, they're not equal. They are at different level of evolution. They do have some differentiation. And it's very important for us to understand, okay, if this is what I'm going after, this is the right RMN and so on and so forth. And so we've kind of tried to move from an allocation-based method where, earlier it was like, okay, we just look at the size of the business and we just sprinkle your media dollars because we need to make, people happy. We're trying to now say, we're going to move away from there, and we will just not do an allocation or a comparison, but we objectively evaluate every RMN. We'll decide what aligns with our objective at this point of time, and then go after it. Easier said than done, obviously, but that's where we have almost a dashboard today where we are actually tracking every RMN, what capabilities they're bringing. We give them an objective score, and based on what our objective is, we're trying to then allocate or spend money that way. So that's what we're trying to do in terms of making choices really there.
I think that's it, right?
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Yeah, we could probably take one question if there is one. If not, I think this was fantastic. Really appreciate your perspectives. Obviously this is a fascinating topic. It is a lot to get into here. What I think is interesting, the comment you said at the beginning, is retail media network is really a retailer selling you the media. That's as simple definition as it could be. There's also so much talk that retail media is new. The capabilities are not new at all. The social media networks were all built on retail media capabilities for CPG, except at that time it was aggregated retail data using a company like Oracle or others, delivered through social media networks to target buyers, and then had closed-loop measurement. The big difference now is, instead of it being a couple social media walled gardens and a couple platforms, is now it's disaggregated data across hundreds of retailers. And those are really the things you have to wrestle with to try and understand that. There's still aggregated data products, but a lot of the big retailers pulled their data out of those solutions so that they can sell it themselves. So you have to figure out how you balance that of trying to understand your consumer when your consumer is not loyal to a retailer. Consumers cross all these retailers. So what's that data kind of doing? So,
if I can add just 15 seconds to it. I think the biggest thing that we are trying to drive is that notion saying at the end of the day, retail media is just media. And you got to start looking at retail media as brand awareness. But I was just talking to Victor saying, for me, the most fascinating example of that has been when I saw TurboTax advertised on Amazon's homepage last year. They don't sell anything on Amazon, but they're advertising because it's become an eyeball place. So you can't really use retail media as a media play to build brand awareness, and that's, I think,
for
the
sure.
bottom of it.
And they can get insights about the consumers they want to reach to, whether it's buying that product or not. It's getting insights about who to target and deliver it. It's great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.